Saw your screenshots on Slack. I'm excited to see your project. You might have like the coolest one today. Probably cooler than mine. I didn't get to build anything super crazy this week.
Yeah. You inspired me, so it's like, okay. So it was yeah, it was kind of like building a crib without reading the directions.
Someone said hello already in the chat. Hello. Welcome everyone. We're live. I know it's going to take a second for everyone to roll in. Let me also I got to pull up and do a reminder that we're live on the event. I did not have that up. How's everyone doing? Let us know in the chat. It's always fun to see where people are watching from, maybe what you're building as well. And give me a second here to pull up some stuff. I'm a little behind this week. I feel like on everything. It was a busy week.
To speak the truth now, you've been out playing in the sun.
It was sunny too. That was nice. Yeah, in the Seattle area, super great weather. But no, we were launching a new DevBox thing, which I think you saw on. I think you were in the office hours the other day. So we had a lot of launches of going on at work, and also we had AI Book Club on Tuesday. I feel like there was a lot of events and stuff going on this week. So. Which is fine. That, like we're saying with this event, I always have the goal of building something. Sometimes I'll have more or less time in the week, so I can actually do something really, really cool, or it's going to be hopefully always somewhat cool, but nothing super crazy. So, but I did get a couple different RAG apps, a couple of RAG variations, and then like an agent memory for the theme this week for people just joining in. Which again, I'll wait a minute or two before we really dive into everything else. But the topic this week was building with vector stores. We also have David here. Welcome, David.
Hello, sir. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good so far. It's a busy week.
Yeah, it's been a busy week for me too. So you'll probably, you and John are gonna have I think the way cooler examples than me what I built this week. So people are in the chat. I love it. Watching from DC, someone San Diego, Riverside, California. They're having great weather today too. San Jose. I feel like California has so much great weather. Every time I go down there anyway, it's always super nice. Awesome. And so I'll probably reiterate this a couple times as people are still joining in, but this is the AI Build and Learn Friday, almost every week series, weekly so far, which has been really fun. Basically, we choose a new topic or a tool, and then the goal is during that week, some people will actually build with it. It's okay if you don't have time to build it. You can just tune in and hear us too, talk about it, and discuss in the Slack or in the chat live. So even if you didn't build anything yet, there's usually just like a lot of conversation about the topic or tool. But also, like I'll show a demo. David and John today also have demos. So if you do build something during the week around this topic and you want to show it off, you're welcome to come onto the stream and actually present with it too, which is really cool. We also have a Slack channel. So during the week, if you want to share resources or share your project in the Slack, that's encouraged as well. Like John shared some really cool screenshots. So I'm excited to see his demo today. I haven't actually seen it yet. But join join the Slack if you want to kind of stay in the loop and like communicate during the week on that subject, share resources. Otherwise, you're welcome to just talk in the chat here. But if you do ever want to come up and join the stream, even if you don't have a project, but you want to join the discussion in audio or video form, message me on LinkedIn as well, and I can send you a link. Let me actually bring up my LinkedIn. So if someone does message me, I can see it. But you are more than welcome to just stay in the chat. I think a lot of people enjoy it that way. And I'll kind of revamp comments and stuff, what you're saying, and bring them into stream. In fact, I can actually show it in stream as well. And with that, let's dive into this week's topic, which was vector stores. And actually, one more thing is I would love to know what topics you all want to do next. So people tuning in, or John or David on the stream, what are the topics that we should do next? So this week was vector stores. Next week is kind of related. It's going to be graph data with Neo4j. I guess you could look at a different graph database if you want. It's going to relate, like I'm going to build a graph RAG type application. So similar to like this week, but with the graph capabilities. Any other, like what are the next ones that people want to build on? Is there like a tool you've seen or a topic you've seen that you've been wanting to dive into?
I think there's one topic I think that's come out recently is the wiki, LLM wiki. I'm
Oh
trying
yeah,
to
that's
learn a bit more.
another Kaparthi thing, I think, right?
Yes.
LM Wiki. That's a good one. I'll add that to the list. So I'm going to book out some events probably next week or this weekend. So just the next one's going to be graph database, and then I'll book a few more out. I also don't want to book too far out because I think one cool thing about this event is if something new comes out, we can add it into the list pretty quickly. So if there's a new model that people want to play around with, we can do that. So just to recap what we've done so far, we started on the last weekend or last Friday of March, and we did MCP. We did agentic search with Tavili, reinforcement learning with OpenEnv, which is a new environment in the PyTorch Foundation for Meta, auto research, which is an Andrej Kaparthi thing as well. And then last week we did Gemma 4 model. And then this week is the vector store. So we can go ahead and kind of dive in here. So I'll talk about, or I think it's been fun to kind of start the event discussing the topic a little bit more versus going straight into the demo. So I'll do that, and then we can all demo stuff we built. And again, if you have a demo you want to show, you can come up, or if you have a demo and you link to it, I can also potentially bring it up and like we can talk about it that way too. So and then there's, I didn't share this. I don't think I shared the link. So the code is all in here. So the code for my projects, I know John's been putting his into. David, if you have a link you want to send me later, or I get the link during the stream, and I can just link it in the in the notes if people want to check out your project too.
That makes sense. I will send you after.
Yeah, no worries. And then this is directly the link for today's topic, which is vector stores. So what is a vector store? People might already know, and actually, I guess, let us know in the chat. Has everyone kind of built something with a vector store? Maybe it's like a RAG application or something similar. It's most likely what people have built before. I think some people are at least familiar with the concepts. So the high level is like you get a piece of data, which often is text, but that can be image or audio, and you can do different multimodal types of RAG as well. And then you have some sort of encoder, which in this case, like usually gets the embedding space. So like we can talk about embeddings a little bit more later, but you get that, and then you store, you get that from the vector part, and then you store that in a vector store, which makes it easy to search and index for basically the nearest neighbor of that embedding lookup. And now a lot of traditional databases actually have like vector storage plugins too. So you can actually use not necessarily one of the big 5 or whatever vector storage databases that you hear about, but there's other databases with like plugins that allow this. And then you query, so you give it a piece of text, and then it's going to use the same embedding, query that vector, and then pull in the top nearest neighbors. You can define what that K is. And then it's going to pull it into, usually for RAG, pull it into context for your LM to then have hopefully a more grounded kind of result in the generation. And so the RAG just kind of talks about that. This RAG section talks about that. I will note a big thing here is all of these things, like the embedding space and actually how to chunk, which I don't think I had it quite listed here. Maybe, yeah, in the RAG one I do. So like you load in a data set, then you chunk that data set up, and then you do embeddings on it, and then you store it. And all these things are things you want to think about, like as I don't know if hyperparameter is the right word, but like chunking is a huge deal. The way that you chunk your data can make a huge difference on like the retrieval and generation side. So just keep that in mind. If you're building like a RAG database, there's a whole bunch of different ways to do it, and you might have to go through several iterations and kind of treat it as a hyperparameter almost for like your LM generation side. like I've done scraping of websites and then figuring out how to chunk that data. Like a chunk is like you break up a web page into multiple chunks, and then those chunks are what gets returned when you do that retrieval piece. And you sometimes, like if you're doing code, for example, like if you're doing documentation, you want to pull that into a RAG system. You probably don't want to break on a function or maybe even a code sample. So you want to have wrappers to be like, make sure that doesn't happen. That all stays in one chunk potentially. So there's a lot of stuff to think about just kind of to tune your RAG application. And then once you have that kind of stored, that's like the workflow piece of like making the vector database or making the vector store. Then you have your retrieval generation piece, which is the online query. So you're not chunking here again, you're just querying, gets the embedding, should be from the same embedding that you did for your saving the data. And then you'll get those nearest results and you inject as context, like we were saying, and then you get your LM to hopefully give you a good answer. The nice thing about this too is that if you're getting these top nearest results, hopefully maybe depending on how you have it set up, they're actually documented like where they came from, or go link to a full document or paper or something like that. Like if you're doing stuff with legal, you probably, and David, I forget if you actually have done work in this area, but it's like if you're generating a response in there, you probably want the lawyer or whoever to look at, actually go back and view the actual source material so you can actually cite things with RAG, which is really nice too. Oh, you're muted, or I can't hear you for some reason. I'm not sure why. Like it says you're unmuted, but
Oh yes, yes, I did something similar for like my action with Pfizer, where every response you need to go back and tell which document PDF and it's like which space it's using, especially when you add question that you need to combine multiple documents. Then you also need to sort where are the resources used to answer.
Yeah, so you can add in, like I've done this also before with like URLs, and you'll see this if you use like a chatbot, right? Like if they cite something, they'll actually link you out to a document or a web page or something too, which is nice. So RAG is really, really good for that. Even if you're like fine tuning a model on generation, but if you need to go back to that source material and cite it somewhere, this could be a really important thing, even if it's like not necessarily enhancing your generation the most maybe, but if you need citation for it, that's just another problem space that this can kind of solve.
Yeah, for me, it's a good indicator on accuracy as well. You know, so I can look at the documents, and so it's like I asked a question about my arm, and you give me something about the lawn. You know, it's it's very like, okay, that's not right. We need some fine tuning here. So
yeah, and I feel like I had something I was going to say, but I forgot what it was already. Oh, I forget. I had a thought. It's gone. Maybe it'll come back. And then there's a whole bunch of different variations of RAG. So like the example I built today was just like the pretty simple RAG one. Like I was saying, I didn't have a ton of time this week to do anything super cool, but I want to explore some of these other RAG types for some stuff I'm potentially building in the future. So there's like kind of the normal naive RAG, which is just kind of what we talked about. That's kind of all there is to it. But there's different ways to retrieve. I've done this before with like a hybrid retrieval, where you do the vector search, but you also do a keyword search. And sometimes you want to like kind of mix them and you'll get better results. So again, treat all this as you're building like a RAG pipeline for production. Treat all these different things and different trade-offs that you can do as like parameters to tweak or try as you're building it. And you might get better results depending on what you're doing. You can rewrite the query. I've had this be really, really helpful in the past too, because if you're building like a chatbot for users coming to your site or something like that, and then you want it to query like documentation, sometimes the way people write things just isn't good. And I know I do this all the time, especially with chatbots now. I feel like I've gotten really lazy. Like I know they'll just fix it or like, figure out how to query better. So you get a query from a user, but then you reword the query and you kind of format it better for what you think will works better for that retrieval step. A whole bunch of different ones. There's the hierarchical or tree RAG is one that I'm pretty interested in too, and that we've talked about in past streams. People have said they were doing similar things too with just like .md files instead of the actual vector piece. But another thing is like instead of just having embedding chunks, you can embed basically files that contain a summary of the information, and then the vector database can query to that, and then from there it can branch down into chunks that are within that. And there's a lot of good results in there. Again, depends on your application. Graph rag is something actually we will explore next week in next week's event. So you can use a knowledge graph, and then usually you do this alongside a vector store. So most of the times in production, I've always seen these kind of mixed together, or you do the keyword search and graph, but you're going to query something, get like a vector store, like the chunks that come up, or like that summary. And then from there, those chunks have representations of where they connect to with graphs. So like this is relevant to this other case. Like again, going back to the lawyer example, you might have like a case that gets pulled up and then it links out to all these other relevant cases, and you can traverse down there or have the LM kind of traverse down there, bring you that information, and then may also return that graph back as relevance for you to explore, or relevant stuff for you to explore properly. You have agentic rag, where you do the retrieval as a tool call, and the model decides whether to search or search again or refine its search, which there's really good results with that usually too, but the trade-off is usually time, because it has to do a little bit more work to get to the results that you want back. A whole bunch of different ones to check out. And then the other thing that we kind of had in as the event, because this came up from a conversation with the community members in the chat where we were talking about what people wanted to do, and they wanted to do vector stores, talking about it, using it for RAG, but also agent memory. So, I mean, this is very, at a naive level, again, this is like very similar to RAG, but you can automatically have it store. So like you've probably noticed this with ChatGPT or Claude or something like that, where it still knows details about you. So you can be chatting with something that says, oh, this is a relevant thing that I might want to remember for later. I'm going to save that, and that can be saved in a vector database, just like you did for the RAG example. It gets injected into a database, and then when you're talking to it, it can like always load that back in, or load in the top whatever ones it thinks it is, or then when you're talking to it, then it can go reference memory, see if there's anything relevant from what you're talking about now into its memory store, and then pull it in. So I built a little agent example for that today as well. But there's a lot more you can do with this, and there's a lot of tools coming out around this right now. I feel like in the industry, agent memory and context is one of the top things that like I keep seeing cool tools and stuff around for. There's one called Kanji that I was looking at the other day that kind of seems like, from what I've seen so far, maybe I'm slightly wrong here, but it seems kind of like it builds a graph RAG as memory, but it will actually use an LLM to figure out what to store and how to store those things, which is kind of cool. So it gives you a lot of like ontology things off the bat that you don't have to create yourself, which is cool. Welcome, Jay. We're talking about RAG and agent memory with vector databases. And I'm about done with the kind of preamble, and so I'll probably go in and show a quick demo on my end. But then I know David and John have really cool demos as well. So
I've been watching in the background. I was debugging my own thing before I dropped in here, so I'm up to speed.
Did you build a RAG or vector database thing this week?
I've been working on a thing that I can explain and show a little bit later, but it is related.
Cool. So again, the code for my examples and John's are directly in this repo, and anyone else I can add a link to. So if you like what you see, go to the repo, and you can go to each section. It has all the old ones as well, and then we'll have the future ones. So I'll go into mine real quick. You can go check out the code. I'll actually go directly into where I have it hosted. So I mentioned at the beginning with John that we launched Flyte DevBox, and so that's what I'm using here. So I'm running this on a DGX Spark, and then Flyte. This is all open source free. You can go use this. This is called DevBox, and it gives you this whole Flyte environment. Flyte's like a widely used orchestration tool that you get like reproducibility, versioning. So every time I do like a machine learning run here or agent run, it's all versioned, and artifacts are stored here as well. So I built a RAG pipeline here. This is a pretty simple one. I just fetched a data set. I did chunking and then embedding an index. I didn't do this on a massive thing. So you can you could scale this out. I think John actually might have done this because I saw a whole bunch of tasks in his screenshot. So I'm excited to see that. But I just did a basic pipeline here. This then gives me a Chroma DB artifact, and then I'm going to load that into an app. So I have this app section here. This is all running on a DGX Spark. So this is all locally in my other room, and I'm SSHing into it from my laptop. So I'm running the Gemma 26B model that we talked about. I think it was just last week, right? That we did that. I was like, it feels so long ago, but it was just last week that we were doing the Gemma 4 stuff. So it's running locally Gemma 4. And then I have a few apps that I built around RAG. One of them is this RAG chat one. So this is a super basic RAG app, but just to demonstrate if people haven't used like RAG before, it's going to take a minute for me to open because it's actually spun down to 0. So one nice thing about using the Flyte here to run stuff is that you can give it a scaling down time. So I have like the app scale down after 5 minutes of no use. The model scales down after 30 minutes of no use, and it frees up my whole DGX resources without me having to like think about how to scale it down. So this one is just a super basic RAG. We can give it how many chunks to return. And then this is using Gemma. So Gemma loves to think, and sometimes you want to cap its thinking tokens. Otherwise, it will go on for a long time. So I just have like sliders for interacting with Gemma. And then this is the prompt that goes in, and it says like, read from or only answer from context, do not invent, cite the resources. And then so I'll just say like, tell me about Canada. And I hope my model did not spin down. Okay, good. So pulled in, these are the top 6 chunks from my vector database. So this is like just a wiki example on Hugging Face. So not a super, super cool RAG example on some data that's awesome or anything like that. But you can see it pulls in these, and then now it's reasoning over them. This is the thinking piece. We try to zoom in for you. And like I said, Gemma 4 does a lot of thinking. So you can cap this if you want it to respond a lot faster, actually. But you can see it read in the resources. It's now reasoning about it. It's also reading the citation. So this isn't a URL here in my case, but it is just like a number of document, and then that will return back as the citation. But this could be a URL. So like if you're scraping something, making chunks, I'll usually save that URL as a reference in there, and then it knows to reference that whole URL back to documentation or something like that. All right, Gemma, stop thinking. I should have put a cap on it. Yeah, that's one thing I noticed. All right, there. Now it's actually responding. So you can see it's telling us about Canada, and then it's actually referencing the documentations because we really prompted to not like only use the context in there. So this is a basic RAG application. Works pretty good. Does the citation piece. I would want to tune chunking and do something cooler with like a cool data set in the future, something like that. But this works pretty well for kind of the use case of just building a RAG app this week. And then another one that I built, go back to my apps here, is this agent memory. Caveat that I was messing around with my tokens, and it might have a wrong Hugging Face token in there. So it actually might mess up on saving these, but I am trying to make it persistent. So this will take a second to open. Basically, just like we were talking about, I'll be chatting with an agent. It's going to extract when there's like a relevant resource or something that I enjoy. And then it's going to save that into a Chroma database and be able to pull it in and reference it just like RAG, except for as a memory. So I'm going to say, I'm building on Flyte 2. And then it's going to reason about it. And it should be like, oh, they do this thing with Flyte 2. That's probably a relevant thing. I'm going to save this into memory. And it'll save here, but I was trying to make this persistent. So when my app spins down, the Chroma artifact goes away. And I try to have something where when it spins down, it's going to push it to Hugging Face. But I might not have the right token. So if you do get an error, that's why. But it'll work until it spins down. Again, I should maybe do a thinking cap for the demos because it feels longer when I'm presenting. But it's going to reason about it. And then let's see if it actually works. Because it's LM, you never know what's going to do. Should say like, oh, memory was saved this term. Oh, maybe it didn't this time. Oh, it's still going. Oh, there we go. So it says user is building on Flyte 2. So now this will always be returned. So if I say I'm running on a DGX Spark, this should now pull in as context that the user is building on Flyte 2. So it's going to build up that context. It knows if you look at the things, it says, I mean, it could do it from the past conversation here too, but when it's reloaded, it would use that as memory and then pull that in. And then it'll probably write DGX Spark this turn as well. And then let's see, I might have messed up the token. I think I saw an error. I don't know. There was an error, but then it says stored. So we'll find out. But I'll go fix this later. The idea is that when this spins down, or if you hit this button, it'll actually save that Chroma artifact to a Hugging Face data set. So then when it reloads, it can pull it back in. Otherwise, you could also use any of the other hosted vector databases, and it would be a little bit easier here. Like Weaviate, Qdrant, Pinecone, Milvis, There's a whole bunch of them. I'm using Chroma. It's a local lightweight one where you get like a local artifact. And I also had one other one I'll show you before other people want a demo. And if you haven't looked at, if you haven't seen like a visualization of RAG data before, maybe this will help you. And I actually have another representation of data. So this is like embedding on news stories, news topics here. So they're kind of segregated down into like, this is about tech, this is about whatever. And this is kind of what an embedding space looks like in 2D, which our human brains are great at looking at. You can go in, hover over here and see how these are clustered. And then so if the query is anything like this, it would look at the closest like 6 members there, pull them in. You can see this in a 3D space if you want it as well. So just to help you maybe visualize like how a query is coming in here, and it's going to look at the closest 3 neighbors and pull in these chunks basically that are there. And I had that kind of represented here. Tell me about Canada. Do that again. I need to have Claude probably go and actually make this UI way better here. Let's see if it loads quickly. But this will show where the query is relative to the embedding space in 2D. Should render. It's rendering when I tested it right before the stream. You never know, live demos, right? Let's see if it comes up. Pulls in the chunks just like before, but it should show it in the 2D map here. If it doesn't show up, I'll have to figure out why it didn't this time. But those are my quick projects that I built this week using vector stores. So excited to expand upon them. Again, your projects don't have to be crazy if you want to build during the week. It's like the goal is just breaking down the barrier of getting started with the thing, I feel like. And so if you build one thing, that's awesome. And then you can take anything you built and kind of hopefully quickly extend it to your other projects. Let me try that one more time. And then if not, no worries. We'll just go to the other demos. Yeah, I don't know why my plot's breaking now. So anyway, imagine that 2D plot, but then showing a query coming in, and it was kind of cool. So I'm gonna have to figure out why it broke. All right, enough about my demos. I know both David and John and Ajay, it sounds like, have cool demos. Who wants to go next? John, I know you have a cool thing.
All right, I'll go. Let me not hit the end button this time.
It's easy to do.
Let's see here.
And I'll catch up on chat while
all right.
people are, while you're pulling that up too. Oh. Okay, your screen's up. Catch up on chat after.
There you go. Yeah, so what I did was I built a RAG chatbot and hosted it all in Union AI. So here you can see the app. Here's the Everstrom RAG chatbot app, and then you can see the various runs. When I execute things in the app is pretty basic. There's a ingest doc within the ingest documentation workflow. It's pretty straightforward. You upload, in this case, it's PDFs. So I created, based off of 4 sample documents of a fictitious company, I created a total of 14. I expanded that to 14 docs. And then, we simply upload those docs and run the ingest on Union. And here's, sorry. So here's the 14 docs. You can select them all. I'm not, but it's from a workflow perspective. You start out with, a certain load of documents, and then your team gains 10 more documents, and then you'll upload those additional 10, and you have a consistent workflow, or you can fully automate and recognize when your document repository changes and then automatically run this ingestion cycle. I also use Cloud Design to just show the ingestion flow in a visual. So here we have the user going to a browser, which is an app hosted in Union AI. And the second step here is you wait for the window to catch. Then the ingest pipeline kicks off. Following the ingest pipeline, and here's some information down below in terms of what that ingest pipeline does. And here's even the code snippet, right? So you can walk through this. That's in the architecture diagram within the code repository, and just step through every step. Within, you can see here and if I expand that, you can see the most recent one it ran. And here you can see the 14 parallel task it spun up to is after it chunks. It's the embedding task. And then if you look at the output, you can see, there's 384 embeddings, 127 chunks, and then the upserted 127, right? So following that step, then it will, it embeds using a GTE small. That's part of the actual application itself. So the application is a Docker app. There's a GitHub action that takes that and hosts it on Docker Hub. And then when you run the process to get the app to Union, it will pull from that Docker Hub. That's kind of the workflow of how we get the app into Union. Pretty straightforward. Pretty straightforward workflow there. So after the embeddings are done, then you can walk through, and I'll be quick here, the actual chatbot. So here you can ask a question, what is your return policy? And I'll just hit go there. So here it's thinking, I expect a Flyte job to be scheduled here, or a Union job, which is basically, so here's the query pipeline. Sorry, did I not hit enter? Still thinking.
Oh, I'm not sure if John's frozen. Might be. Oh, might be back. I hear a click. I think the screen is frozen and your video is frozen.
A lag. Sorry about this.
I'm gonna move him down real quick and we can add him back in. But I was gonna ask what database he used because I don't know if I missed it first. Oh, might be back now.
Came back. Sorry about that.
What vector database were you using? I might have missed it at the beginning.
So here's the query. Here's the query pipeline, and effectively Claude in this case, and forming its response based on the vectors.
Cool. I think your screen's frozen again, but I really like the thing you had at the beginning too, where you had that kind of walkthrough, like architecture of what all the steps were. I thought that was really cool. Some questions in the chat.
That's part of one of the new features that
let me see.
Oh,
all right.
Sorry.
there's some like, I think we saw most of the project though. It's pretty cool. Some questions too in the chat. Someone asked like, can you secure, can you encrypt the vectors in a vector database? I think the answer is yeah. I haven't done that, but I think the answer would be yes. And you could encrypt them before they go in and then have the same decryptor, I think, as after you retrieve them as well. As the off the top of my head, that's the way I was thinking I would probably do it. David, do you want to show your project?
Yeah, for sure. 1 second. Let me share my screen.
And again, while David's bringing up his screen too, do people have other topics or tools that they want to add into the list to do in the coming weeks?
All right, can you see my screen?
Yep.
So I guess, so for this one, I developed a RAS system that focus on getting the key information from PDF for pharmaceutical industries, so that, because like you don't want to reset a lot of document every day, so you can add question like, what symbol you want, which part, is by, so that the RAS system go through the PDF and just file you the answer instead of you manually scan through the document, which save a lot of time. And for example, this one is answer like this part is by, and which date is by, and it's also give you the source on the right side, is the certificate of quality, so that it's go really well, so that you don't need to waste time scan the document. And I guess this is the general flow of my Qdrant architectures. Before chunking, I do some classification using LLM and normal logic regress so that it's build label the document, and then after chunking, then embedding, and then I saw in right now this one using Facebook AI similarity search. It's basically not really a vector base, but it's have you performing vector search. So everything, so this logic, so the current database is mostly built on normal logics and hybrid search and hybrid retrieval. So it searched by the first thing it search the document type, and then it search by keyword, and then if everything failed, then it's using vector databases. And the project I did really quickly were doing some finance news. So basically, it's pull the data from the FinHub and then generate database locally. This time I'm trying to Qdrant, which is really different compared to the Facebook similar search. It had a lot of built-in like it's already had a lot of built-in function like the filter function. It's make it a lot easier to implement compared to the older project I'm doing.
Cool. I like Fayus or whatever, Facebook, whatever, is really cool. I shared the link to it in the chat too. That's a really nice vector. It just stores it in memory or whatever. I forget how it works, but it's great to get started with vector search.
Yeah, it's really simple. You can store in memory or you can store on local. So it's really flexible to start.
Yeah, definitely check it out. Yeah, I think I'd forgot even at the beginning. I had listed some of the event, but I guess I did list them out. But like Fayus is really popular. Chroma is really popular for kind of getting started doing local stuff with artifacts. And then if you want hosted ones, Weaviate has hosted, but they also have a local database now as well. That's kind of newer. That is cool. I was messing around with it several months ago. Pinecone is pretty popular. It comes up a lot. Qdrant, which I think you used too in one of your projects, or you've talked about them before. And then Milvis is open source. Zils is the hosted version. There's a whole bunch of them. And from my personal like findings, like when I've used them, I don't have like a super strong preference towards them. Like they do have built-in features that are nice for embedding and stuff like that sometimes. But if you're doing a lot of that on your own already through some sort of workflow, a lot of them behave very similar to me. And it's just more like, do I want a hosted one that can, I guess, scale out if I need it? Or am I okay with like a local artifact? At least for me so far, that's kind of what I've run into. But it's like, if people are like, oh, do you like Pinecone way better than Qdrant or something? And to me, they feel pretty similar. Someone else had a good question actually earlier that I wanted to bring up if people have ideas or how they want to talk about it. Is they have an issue where they have a chat application where a RAG character has memories about you at long context, so like 100K, and the model just ignores the chunks it gets. I'm not sure what DSV4 is, if anyone knows, but is there any tips or tricks? Does anyone have any tips or tricks for long context memory loading chunks in? No. I know one thing. This, you probably already tried this potentially in your use case, but maybe not. Sometimes moving the order of the context around can help too. So like if you have that longer context chunk up, and then you make sure that you're inserting the new chunks at the bottom, like so it's like more recent in its memory. I don't know if you've tried that yet, but I know that there was like papers about that like last year. Just it sounds really simple, but like moving the context around can help. So like I think the later it is in the later it is in the injection part, I guess a lot of times the models treat that as a little higher priority than the earlier stuff. So I don't know if you've tried that at all, but that would be interesting. Oh, so the RAG is inserted right before the assistant tried it. But was it okay? But did you try after, or did you try both? Otherwise, yeah, I mean, you might be able to. You probably don't want to get rid of context, but I don't know if you can do things like summarizing that context down, and then so if you can offload it and have a summary of the stuff that is what you need in there. I haven't seen like what your data actually looks like. So potentially. Oh, go ahead.
I think one of the that you mentioned about summary, you can try to like make it become a metadata. Like instead of summary, you have a keyword and then add tag to each chunk. So later you don't need to use like a whole long paragraph, but using only one keyword metadata.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my instinct without seeing the data, because I feel like I want to see it to even have a better opinion, but would be something like that. If yeah, just sorting stuff doesn't work, can you get away with the summary and then reload back in the other data if you need to? I'm not quite sure, but good question. And then someone also asked about how there's some good questions here. How do you add guardrails? I forget where that. Yeah, how do you add guardrails? Do they need rules or wrappers with specific limits? I think that's just the Elms in general. And you should add guardrails. I didn't for my apps, my demo apps here, but if you're going in production, you definitely should add guardrails. That can start in the prompt layer, but then you should have often in production, I'll have like another filtering layer. And that can look like different ways. Some people use another LM as a filter. You can use actually like fine tuning a BERT model that can run really efficiently, but it can take in unstructured data and give like a classification output, like if this is bad or good. That can work really well in a lot of cases. You can also do embeddings, kind of like we were talking about embeddings earlier, but with responses that you don't want. So you can have like, if this looks close to this whole list of responses that I have and it gets close enough to that, don't return it. You can also do regex checks for stuff. Like if you're monitoring for phone numbers and credit cards and stuff, I think that is like a no-brainer. Depends on what your application is. But I think, yeah, classification, you can pull out a whole bunch of different other metrics and then add scoring things to it. Like you can have a sentiment, a lightweight sentiment classifier, and if sentiment's really negative and you never want that because you have like a support app, then don't return that response. So there's a whole bunch of different ways to do it. And I think it depends on your application. And I think that would be another good subject for a Friday stream, would actually just be on like evaluations and monitoring, or evaluations and then maybe monitoring on another one. And guardrails, like they're all kind of, in my head, they clump in the same area, but they're slightly different. And someone also asked how to evaluate them. So separate question, which is giving better outputs, any mathematical tools to get eval results. There's one I haven't used yet called Ragus, which is like a whole system for it. I'll link to it in here in a second. I'll find it while Jay is presenting. That's the one I see that comes up a lot for it. Otherwise, there are a lot of other metrics that might work for it. Like I forget which one is like rouge and blue. One of them will try to one of them kind of does some math formula to understand how much of like a like, I think you can use it to understand how much of a chunk is in there. So like, or how similar the response is to like the chunk, or is that data from a chunk inside the response? And so that's one that you can also look at using. I think Jay's used that actually before.
Yeah, I was going to say, I didn't use Rouge yet, but I was doing some research into that for a document, like insights retrieval tool I built last year. And I ended up using cosine similarity, which basically just the source document was being converted into some structured data. And I wanted to test the accuracy of that converted structured data to the original source document. And so that basically just takes the actual text from both and compares their similarity, and then gives it a single metric score, like between 1 and 0 as a floating point. So you could get like, all right, this extracted information is about 82% similar to the source document. So that, you can base that on whatever your threshold is that you need. But yeah, so do you want to jump into the thing that I've been
Yeah.
picking at as well?
Your screen. Yeah, cosine
Okay,
similarity is a good default to start with, but I think that
it's like super basic.
Yeah, it's very basic, and quickly you can probably find some other metrics. But even if it's like, it's a good baseline to have, maybe even for everything. Like, you can just have it
just for measuring.
Yeah, and it might not be super high,
similarities.
but you could see like, oh, it was this number, and now it's lower or something like that. So
yeah, like it was just a quick metric to see like, oh no, this recent open source model I started using, or this particular fine tuning or initial prompt is not getting me good results. So it was a really quick temperature on just, is this even in the right direction or not? Yeah. Okay. We do screen share here.
Yeah, I don't see your screen quite yet. Yeah, any other questions in the chat or comments? Has anyone played around with RAG, and have you used like any other measurement types of things, like tools or formulas? Oh, is this capturing? This is capturing your screen?
Yeah. So for a while now, I've been wanting to build something that's basically like a focus pair programmer, or just pair focus buddy. And I figured this is something that I could do, but I feel like local models have gotten just fast enough and capable enough now that it's actually a reasonable thing to do with the Gemma 4 series. So a couple things that I did over this past week. One was actually, see if I can move my other. You can't see that tab. Okay, that's fine. I have a second tab basically that's just showing a remote development LLM that an API that I set up at home, just on a spare laptop. And it's running Gemma for, I think, the 26B base model. So it's not the quantized one, which I was surprised. It runs very well on like a 32 gig MacBook M2, basically. So like, it's usable. It's basically, I'm hitting it as the remote API for this using ngrok. Basically pipe through a public URL and then hit that home laptop without exposing the actual IP address. And it's able to basically process each of these screenshots that I'm grabbing every 5 seconds from the local context here on this laptop. Send that image to the model. It describes what's going on. It's kind of similar and partially based off of your webcam live feed that you did the demo on. And it just does a 5-second, like what's happening right now description. And then every 60 seconds, it summarizes the last few entries that it made based on those 5-second intervals. The other thing I took from this recent sort of RAG exploration is like, okay, maybe I take that context and start storing it in a RAG database. So I think I'm using Chroma DB here. I'm still super new to RAG and all these different database or like vector store databases in general. So I think I'm using Chroma here, and then I can hit that with questions and have the LLM search through and see what comes back.
This is basically like the Microsoft recall tool, but all local, that you built, so you completely trust it.
Uh-oh, something broke. Well, live demo.
Live demo.
Yeah, of course. You can see a few minutes ago before I changed something, it had basically said, "Oh, hey, you're like hacking on a Python project and watching a live stream." So it was working. I'll figure that out. But I also had it at basically include parameters here so that I can learn how to tune some of these and see what the effects are for changing like top K or max tokens and temperature. So it's partially trying to accomplish the problem of having like a real-time context monitor that maybe I can then feed the context from this to a coding tool as I'm trying to work on a problem. And I want it to be able to keep track of more than just the IDE and the project context, but also be able to see that I'm looking at docs on this website and maybe that I have like a 3D application like Unity open and I'm working in the game view on this particular scene. Like, can I get to a point where that wider context is a little bit more useful and then build a thread ongoing over time? That's kind of the bigger picture here of what I'm trying to move towards.
That's cool.
But it's not using any cloud models, which is super cool to me.
Yeah. And that you said that's the 26B just on your Mac on a MacBook.
Yeah.
How much?
And I mean, I think I can actually just switch this over to local as well. I think if I reload here, it should by default use my local Gemma 26B.
That's cool.
So like it can actually just run on Olama on this same laptop instead.
Very cool. Yeah, if you were here last week, I did the Gemma 26B where I was just looking at my webcam and doing something similar where it just says like this person is in the frame and then but it keeps the context like you're saying. In my case, it wasn't doing in a vector, but that would be cool over time because you could have even for like security systems or something like that. I think that would be interesting. Like if you're logging all those things over time and then you have like a day's worth of what were the events that occurred on this camera. I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Somebody in the chat asked a question around what you have been doing. The time related query. Did you actually add some time related query capability? I'm not sure. I need to actually dig in and see if these timestamps are being stored in the database as well. I literally just built this like in the last couple hours.
And you would need to also query the current time. I think if you said yesterday and then it knows the current timestamp and then it can go deduct that yesterday would mean, subtract one from today or whatever like that. But that's really cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay.
Anyone else in the chat happen to have awesome vector store retrieval or agent memory projects that you want to mention? Or are you working on something similar? I know that the Nick P was asking cool questions about long context and then injecting stuff in from RAG. It sounds like they're probably working on something interesting with like a character that you talk to. Oh, and then they also said
that would be useful for my thing as well.
Yeah.
You get over like days and weeks, you want to be able to still like query back in your history of what you've been doing over, the last month.
Yeah, and you might want to add just more context out of the box. Like if it's giving you live narration and you actually maybe a similar thing of like creating a summary too, right? Like you might not want all the raw logs, but like what's the active summary that's always being loaded in there? I think would be interesting to think about. And like building that summary layer, like you can have an LLM, the same LLM maybe, even just like condense it down. Or maybe it condenses it down every 24 hours or something like that. And that's what gets loaded in.
Right. It like creates like a daily report for you at the end of the day, or for its own context too. Honestly, I think that's where most of the actual tuning to get this to be something that's useful lies, is in figuring out the sort of hierarchy of, all right, you're capturing context from what you're doing every 5 seconds. You're doing some 60-second summaries. You're doing like a daily report, but how do you actually restructure and organize that information over time so that you're not just ending up with a massive log forever?
Cool. Oh, and the DSVR stands for DeepSeek V4, which makes sense. Totally makes sense. Hard to keep track of all the acronyms. I actually am curious if you're still on for the chat. How has DeepSeek V4 been? Because that just came out the other week, I think, right? The preview for V4. I haven't tried it yet. it's hard to keep up. We had a new Quinn model, I think last week, a new Kimi model last week, which the Kimi model is too big, I think, for me to even run on the Spark. GPT 5.5 even came out, and I haven't even tried that. there was so many models that came out last week. It was crazy. A new Nemotron came out too, or that came out this week, which is NVIDIA's. I want to try that too. It's like it might have similar performance to the Gemma 4 26B. Kind of seems like from the benchmarks. Who's gonna build something with graph stuff next week? Jay, you should add in graph rag on this, and then you can, for every concept that you're working on, then it'll know how to go back to all of it instead of just on a vector store.
Oh, right. I mean, that's more what I was thinking. Is I actually like the graph approach of connecting or like relating these things as more of a network over time. The other thing I was thinking is maybe take this type of information and then map it to a visual similar to that you would see in like Obsidian, where you end up with a network of activities that are related to maybe actual notes that you were taking over time.
That'd be cool. Yeah, I'm excited next week to see it with the graph.
This is actually one of the bigger things that I'm looking forward to about this. Is I usually want to understand what is most useful about a certain type of data store solution, because there's many different options and formats, and graph and vector store are just some of them, go back to like SQL or NoSQL solutions as well. But where do you use a particular one versus another, and like what are they optimal for is something I'm still building sense.
There's a tool, I'll pull it up too. I'll share it in the chat. So there's a tool, I haven't run with it yet, but it looks really cool. Actually, one of my coworkers has, I think, called Kanji. This actually might be another tool for like build and learn in the future. But it's a agent memory layer. I'll share my screen actually again real quick. So there's a GitHub for it. I think they have an actual web page too. It's an agent memory layer. So it seems like, again, I haven't dug super deep into it, but it seems like they kind of use like a graph approach, a graph and vector approach for storage, but they have an LM layer that creates that graph for you. So like if you're passing it to an LM and you're like, hey, here's data, how does it relate to other data? Or what are key things that you should extract out of this, like names or subjects or anything like that? And I'm sure you can like prompt it depending on how you want to graph those types of things. So it's kind of like doing a graph, but with an LM layer that figures out how to define that graph instead of you as a human, like putting things in. It sounds interesting.
So it's basically doing some of the parsing and saying, oh, based on all the other stuff I already have in here, how does this relate to it? And then tries to organize it that way for you.
I think so. I haven't used it yet, and I haven't done like my own super deep dive, but that's kind of my high level understanding. It looks like there's a collab you can even get started with, is something like that. So it'll figure out what features to kind of embed. Oh, Nick said they have a narrative engine creating PR scenarios. Huge difference between DeepSeek v3 and v4 in that specific department. For example, never model
role-playing scenarios.
Oh,
narrative role-playing scenarios. Okay.
Yeah. So that's cool. I have to try V4, DeepSeek V4. Actually, I don't know if people. Oh, I read PRs and like pull requests to see where my mind is.
Narrative role player. Pull request scenario.
I was like, oh, they're role playing as like a PM, like on GitHub. Like that's cool.
We're too deep in.
That's awesome. That's awesome though. That's cool to hear. There's a huge difference. I need to go check out DeepSeek V4. Also, as a question for people in the chat. So like last week we did one where it was like building an app with Gemma 4. Do people like that type of thing? Like, I mean, we won't probably do every single week, just model back to back because so many are coming out. But would people want to do like one of the sessions on using DeepSeek V4, and then that's like your task for the week is trying to build something with DeepSeek? And maybe that's even swapping it out from a previous model. Like Jay, if you can try it out and see if it works. I don't know if I think it's multimodal, but try it out and see if it works for your use case or something like that, and then talking about it.
Yeah, that honestly, I think rather than trying every single model, because you'd probably need like 10 different sessions per week to keep up with that. I think it'd be cool to do like a benchmarking focused one, or like focus a session on just evaluating a few of the most recent ones against one another.
Mm-hmm. It would be like, yeah, Quinn versus DeepSeek V4, battle of the
Like
models.
the model battle.
Maybe that's a different event. Maybe that's not your like build and learn. Maybe that's another one later. We do like a battle of the of the models or something like that.
Like model stadium. It's like your Pokemon Stadium 64.
And
You're just
someone
gonna
said
have models head to head.
Someone said in the graph rag session, it'd be great to have where certain graphs can be done using some other approach, like a combination of vector DB and some engineering, so that we don't force a graph DB into those tasks. I'll keep that in mind. I think there are some plugins that or frameworks that do that type of thing too. I could be wrong, but I think I've seen those. I'm going to use Neo4j. I put that in the title, but if you do end up using a different graph database, that's cool too for your like graph rag. But that Neo4j is the one I see the most all around, but I know that there are other ones as well. But that's the one, like, if I'm trying to build a production app or something, I'm at least going to go poke around at Neo4j probably first for it. David, what other topics do you want to do?
I guess right now I'm still exploring a lot of the LLM and the new I forgot the name, but the one that came out recently is like basically building similar to Wiki, but it's building more like a folder structure.
Oh yeah. Let me see if I can bring that up real quick, because that was the Carthy Wiki. We'll probably bring it up, right?
Yeah, that's one.
LM Wiki.
Just kind of want to see like how it's compared side by side, RAG system, LLM, like LLM and the second brain, like how they works different.
So I haven't used this yet. I've heard about it. The Tolkien Gateway. Okay, this sounds like a good one. Carthy stuff is always pretty fun to dive into as well and see what's actually going on there. Most people experience LMs and documents. Looks like RAG. You upload a collection of files. The idea here is different. Instead of just retrieving from raw documents at query time, the LM incrementally builds and maintains a persistent wiki. That actually sounds cool for your case almost, Jay. And actually, I don't know, for
very similar.
For the role-playing one too, maybe potentially there could be something interesting here. But yeah,
I mean,
structured...
like if you are the character in your own life, we need to maintain the knowledge base of you.
But yeah, I guess this is having a memory. So you probably use this with like RAG too, if you wanted to pull in more data. But it's like, this is its, like, in my head, again, I haven't dived into this, but just reading this thing right now, it sounds like this would be like active for that session or whatever it is. And then you can incrementally build on it potentially.
Yeah, I think it's had really good memory, but I heard that's the main problem is if you get the wrong knowledge at the beginning, it can like stack on top of wrong knowledge after wrong knowledge. So you can kind of combine with RAGs to make sure that, you know, RAGs make sure the information is correct.
Yeah. I mean, is this really just kind of, I mean, is this just another version of like summarizing though? Like if we're doing context management for agents, you're kind of,
think so.
Or at least I've done that in other use cases. You're just
kind of what it seems like. Is it's
you're
just
building a compound summary. There might be a specific way of doing it, or it's just marketed a certain way or something like that. Like I don't know what the LM Wiki. I guess there's probably a schema they have defined here. We'll dive into it. This will be a great conversation for one of the other build and learn. So let's check it out and answer these questions that we have. Since this one's not on that, we'll save this for the other one. But cool to look at. I'll probably put this up for in the next week. We already have booked, and then there might be one other one. So in the next couple weeks, we'll do this as the topic. So thank you, David. That's a great one. Jay, any other topics come to your mind before we wrap up the stream? And anyone else in the chat too, let me know topics that you want, and we'll book them out. And then also, if you want to let me know later, join the Slack. And there's a channel that's like ML and AI. That's where I've been putting threads for each weekly topic too. So if you want to discuss what you're building during the week, join that as well. Drones.
Yeah, I mean the RL training is definitely still a relevant topic for me. From that side
Mujoko.
of things.
Actually, I wouldn't mind doing one on Mujoko. So if people haven't used like the Mujoko reinforcement environment,
I thought you did already, but maybe that was
no, I did one on OpenEnv, and then
okay.
I was doing some personal Mujoko projects and some work Mujoko projects, but I didn't do one for a stream yet. So I think a Mujoko environment would be cool.
Yeah, I agree. Mujoko would be a great one to dig into.
Someone asked, Jay, are you uploading the stream or just screenshot for your project with local Gemma model?
I'm just doing periodic screenshots. I don't know how well a real-time video feed would be handled by a remote API to my local laptop 26B model. So I just stuck with like basically 5-second screenshot repetitions.
Also on that note, are you saving the screenshots or are you just saving the LM generated response?
I'm not currently saving the screenshots. That could be relevant. I feel like that's a potential optimization point though, because it's not like you want screenshots to infinity every 5 seconds. So I was thinking about maybe there's a way I could approach this where I only keep a screenshot if it's over a threshold of like different from previous ones. So maybe if so many pixels in that image have changed from the previous one, that's an indicator that I switched context to something totally different. So it should save that one.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how I want to approach that yet. But
and I don't know if you need to save them. Like if there's any use case to bring them back up, like maybe there's not. It could be interesting if you're like, I want to like, what was I looking at or something like that. Like again, seeing the marketing for like Microsoft Recall was something like that. And you could go back in time and like see what was going on. Again, I don't know if you actually want to do that for your use case, but interesting to think about.
Yeah. I didn't think it was that important for this initial pass, but definitely it could be. Maybe even like capturing specific windows if I'm switching focus on screen rather than just the whole screen context.
Another thing that could be interesting, just as fun brainstorming on this project, would be that you could save screenshots and then you could have like a larger model or something go over it and build context again with more time. Because I think right now you're doing it pretty fast with just the Gemma 4 billion active. It's like not getting an insane amount of context on it, where you could have like the dense version or just more time, like don't cap the thinking tokens or whatever, and then it could build up a more precise potentially thing, and then you could delete the screenshots later. Like you still might not save them, but you could have like, hey, this is now going into the real knowledge builder or something like that, and then the current one can just query the better knowledge or something like that. That could be
I was thinking maybe I could have like a smaller local model like on this laptop, while the remote one is actually processing through those screenshots in like real time, just building all of the context. When it comes back, I can feed that context I've received to a smaller local model that just has access to like a web search tool. So it can basically, anytime it sees particular things of note in that screen space or that were captured in the context, it can do a search, grab resources and basically collect that stuff together. So it's only working with existing written context and doing specific things like getting links relevant to it.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I like it. Awesome project.
So it's kind of like a study buddy.
Yeah. Awesome projects, everyone. Thank you so much for coming on. Jay, David, John's already gone, but thank you for being on the stream. Always way more fun when it's not just me up here. Thank you everyone in the chat too. Always great having people talk about their projects and discussions in there. It's really, really fun. So thank you again for talking in the chat and everyone tuning in. Hopefully I'll see you all next week on the graph version. So I'm very excited. This has been on my list to dive way more into later. So I'm going to force myself to do it next week. So I'll talk to you all later. Again, if you have questions, if there's something else we missed, go to the Slack link. I think I already shared it several times. I'll share it one more time. There's an introduction channel in there too. So if you actually want to put like a larger introduction to the rest of the community, definitely encourage it. Obviously you don't have to, but it's really fun seeing like what people are working on. So thank you again, everyone. I'm going to wrap up the stream. David, Jay, I will see you around, hopefully.
See you around.
All right. Thanks, Ed.
Bye.